and welcome back for our second collection of tiny tutorials where I'm going to take all of the live videos that we've done for the second part of the May Live Day Instagram lives that we've been doing and putting them together to show you how to make a tote bag. So get your supplies ready from your yo-yo construction and I'll meet you at the cutting table. Today we are going to move from hand stitching onto making our scene, our little flower scene, into the beginnings of a tote bag. So far, if you're just joining me for the first time today, what I have been demonstrating every day for just a couple minutes is how I go about making a scrappy scene on a piece of fabric, and then and that's what we've accomplished to this point. We've gone over how to pick your different fabrics, how to make yo-yos, how to cut out stems, how to arrange those on a larger piece of fabric, and then how to hand stitch those into place. So if you're following along at home and doing some of the homework, that's what we've accomplished so far. This looks a little weird because these are my wrong sides facing. Let's jump into it. Here are my yo-yos. Everything that we've done so far is on one side, one piece of this bag construction, and then I've taken just a plain piece of denim, the exact same size as my piece that has the yo-yos on it, so I always get this part wrong. Yep, 17 inches across and 18 inches tall, and I've put them right sides together and pinned them all the way around on the sides, on the bottom, and back up the other side. See this little part here down at the bottom? So the magic of bag making is that you can take a two-dimensional piece of fabric, and with a little bit of manipulation and different seaming, you can make it a three-dimensional object. And when I first learned this, it was like mind-blowing. And there's lots of different techniques for accomplishing that boxed out bottom. So this is what we're shooting for here. This boxed out bottom on the bottom. So in order to achieve that boxed out bottom on the bag, which gives the bag some depth, it's like a false gusset. A true gusset would be an extra piece of fabric here, but to get this boxed out bottom and give you more depth in the bag, there's just a little bit of magic that goes into creating that. But now we need our sewing machine. So I like to put my two pieces of fabric right sides facing, and then with the fabric together, before I sew, I cut out what's going to produce my box bottom. So this square is 2 inches. So I measured 2 inches in from the side and 2 inches up from the bottom and cut away that square that I traced out. So this guy was here on my 17 by 18 inch piece, and I just cut that away. Then I went to my machine and I stitched. You can see my seam right here. I stitched all the way down one side, back tacked at the bottom, stitched all the way across the bottom of my bag. These are the stems of my flowers. Make sure you're stitching the bottom and not the top of your bag. And then all the way up the other side. So I've got seams on the 3 sides of my bag. Obviously, because I want to be able to get into my bag later, I'm leaving the top open. Then I'll remove my pins. And what comes next is what produces that boxed out bottom. So there are patterns that will say, go ahead and just stitch it together and then match your corners, which is what we're doing now. But I find it easier to have this hole here, and I'll show you why. So my hand is inside my tote bag, and now I'm able to manipulate the fabric here while all the while seeing what I'm doing. So I'm pulling, these are my 2 seams, I'm pulling everything opposite so that the 2 seams meet each other. So I'm smoothing out everything there. And you can see this is my side seam, this is my bottom seam, and I'm meeting them together. I'm going to open them flat so that it helps reduce bulk once it goes through my machine. And I can make sure inside that my seam lines are aligned together. So when my bag comes together, everything looks pretty and nice. And then I just throw 2 pins in there, or as many as you feel comfortable, maybe 1 on the seam, 1 at the beginning, and 1 at the end. And then I'll take this back to the machine just like it is with my pins and sew across, so perpendicular to all the seams I've done so far, sew across the bottom there at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that produces this seam right here. That's what it looks like on the outside, which makes your bag go from a 2-dimensional bag to a 3-dimensional object. And that takes care of that. And this is as far as we've gotten so far. So this is our front panel, and that is just a plain back panel that we have, and there is a 4-inch wide bump at the bottom, giving the bag a little bit of dimension. Yesterday I showed you how to put all of that together, and today we were just going to talk about our inside fabrics. For my inside pieces, I cut again 17 inches across, but I only did 17.5 inches tall. So it's a half inch shorter than the outside pieces. And the reason for that is once you turn your bag around, like once you get it all put together and fitting, if the inside pieces measure the same as the outside pieces, you get like this scrunchy bunchiness in the bottom of your bag. But if you just take a 1/2 inch off the length of your inner liner, then you get a clean fit and you don't get any bunchiness down at the bottom of the bag on the inside of your bag. Does that make sense to everyone? I hope so. So I did want to point out a couple of things. I have my cutout corners like I did yesterday. So there's my 2-inch bump. There'll be a 2-inch bump on either side, causing a 4-inch depth of the bottom of the bag. And I'm going to put the corners together the same way I did yesterday by pulling them perpendicular to each other, matching the seams, and then stitching across the bottom here. But in this bag, in the very bottom of the bag, I'm leaving an opening so that when I sew my whole bag together, this is called a birthing hole. And the reason for it is so that you can flip your whole bag right side out when you're when you've completed it. Sorry. And then of course the top of your bag is open as well, so that you can stitch around the top when we're ready. Basic construction is you put together the entire outside, you put together your entire inside, and then you join your inside and outside around the top of the bag. And that's the basic construction for a tote bag. We'll add handles in there, do some other things, but that's how you put a tote bag together. So today is straps, and so these are going to be, I'm going to turn this into the straps for the bag. So this is a fabric belt that was part of a pair of pants that I used or wore like 100 years ago, and then along the way somehow I got rid of the pants, kept the belt, and I'm going to use this for my straps. So I'm just going to use my rotary cutter. See, the edges there are at a 45-degree angle. I'm just going to use my rotary cutter to cut those off straight, and then cut them in half so that I have 2 separate pieces. Of course my rotary cutter's over there. Hold on. Rotary cutter. Okay, so I'm going to cut off my 45-degree angle tips and then fold the belt in half and cut across there as well. And then I'll have 2 equal length straps. If you don't have a leftover belt from a pair of pants that you can turn into straps, and you don't have webbing that you can use as straps for your bag, then I have a tiny tutorial that's already published on YouTube about how to make fabric straps for projects, for bags that you're wanting to make. It's maybe a 10-minute video that shows you how to take straps of fabric, hey Mindy, and fold them in on each other to make straps for your bags. So if you're looking for a quick and easy way to make fabric straps, then go ahead and check me out there, and that tiny tutorial will help you do so. All right, so now straps, where do you put them? How do you do them? What's happening? So you're gonna take a strap and attach it to the outside of your bag. And it's going to look weird because when you hold your bag, obviously your strap is going to go, or let's put it on my head. Your strap is going to go above your bag like this so that your arm can go through it and you can hold it. Is anybody else going to laugh at the ridiculousness of me right now? But when you sew your strap, you're actually going to position it this way so that the raw edges of your strap line up with the raw edges of the outside of your bag, and they're going to flop down below so that when you turn everything out to the right side, it all can be brought back up to the way it wants to look when you're all done. So if you're doing straps for your bag, then you're going to want to position them here. And I usually measure in about 2 to 2.5 inches from my edge, so from my seam. I have my seam right there in the middle of my, on the side of my bag. So I'll measure in 2.5 inches or so from this edge and place, lying up my bag strap. Smooth it all the way around, making sure I'm not twisting it in any way. And then measure 2.5 inches in from this side and place my bag strap. And then I'll pin those in place, and I usually throw like a basting stitch through it just to hold it before I go ahead and assemble the rest of the bag. Of course, this is going to have 2 straps, so what I did in the front, I'm going to do the exact same thing in the back, and I'll have 2 straps ready to go when I'm set to put all my bag layers together. So that is how you position your straps when you're making a tote bag. So we have our outer bag all constructed, and we have our inner bag all constructed, and then today I'm going to show you how to layer your fabrics so that you can sew them together to make a tote bag. And you know what's funny? Tomorrow, which is Mother's Day, we will be birthing our tote bags. And no, I did not make that term up. That is what it's called in bag making. And 2, I did not plan it to land on that day. It just happened that it did. So tomorrow is birthing your tote bag. But today I'll show you how to put them together. So I'm going to take my outer bag and I'm going to slide it inside my inner bag so that the right sides of the fabric are all touching. I'm just going to shove everything in there to start with. My next step is to match all of my seams. So I have a seam in the side of my outer bag, I have a seam in the side of my inner bag, and I want to open those seams flat on both pieces and match them so that right where the seam is, they touch outer and inner bag. And with the seams pushed open, I'll grab a pin and I'll pin those together. So that's step 1. And then I'll do the same thing on the other side, matching my seams. Match them together, open them up flat, and pin them. And then after I have that done, then it's just a matter of pinning as many as you need or feel comfortable with all the way around the top of your tote bag. So I'm just matching all of my raw edges for the inside of my bag and the outside of my bag, just matching all my raw edges, bringing them together neatly, and putting pins all the way around the top. And this is where my next seam will go. I'll use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'll slip the bag over the base of my machine over that plate so that, hey there, Sarah, so that it doesn't, I don't want to stitch my bag closed. I don't want to stitch just straight across it. I want to stitch so that it makes a circle around the top of the tote bag. So these pins will keep all my layers together without shifting, and then I'll be ready to go. So that's that. So then my next step for today is to slide this over the base of my sewing machine and stitch all the way around the top of my bag without stitching it closed. Just stitch around the 2 layers all the way around with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that will put the 2 layers of my bag together. And then remember, we left this opening at the bottom, and that is the spot from which we're going to birth our bags tomorrow on Mother's Day. Last time we met, we talked about stitching our bag pieces together. It's kind of hard to see from that side, but there is my stitch line. I went all the way around the top of my bag with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and now I am taking out my pins so that we can birth our bag. So from a couple of days ago, this is the opening we left in our lining of our bag, and this is where we are going to birth our tote bag. So all I'm going to do is reach in from the hole in our liner, pull the outside of the bag out through that hole, and birth our tote bag. We all get to be mothers of tote bags today. Turn everything out so that the right side is showing. There's our yo-yos on the front. And then the only 2 steps we have left is to tuck, see all those raw edges? We're just going to tuck them to the inside and press them and stitch them closed. And so I'll put a pin in there to make sure those are all closed up and stay closed for me. And then lastly, then you push the lining of your bag down inside, and I'll go ahead and press this up here at the top all the way around so that I have a nice, clean, crisp edge. And my very last step is to go ahead and top stitch close to this, the top of my bag. And then I have a tote bag all done and ready for use. Tote bags, you can make them any size you want. The technique stays the same. You can adjust how big and wide and deep you want to make the bottoms of your bags. You can make smaller tote bags with smaller dimensions starting off. So this 17 wide and 18 tall is just a nice size for me that I like. And I just like the way it looks, and I like the background that it gives me, the size background that it gives me for adding scraps to it, and it holds a lot of stuff. But feel free to experiment with your sizes as well for your tote bags. So there you go. So this is a very basic, simple tote bag. It's squishy and scrunchy because there's no lining and there's no added layers, but you can beef the tote bag up simply by adding batting or interfacing or a fleece or flannel lining. You can also add an interior zipper to your bag if you wanted to. You can add a closure, a snap closure to help you keep it closed. But I just wanted to give you some basic instruction for how to make a tote bag using some of the scraps that we have been talking about together. So there you have it. There is our tiny tutorial for our tote bag. I will have all of the dimensions cut for you down in the description bar below, as well as the links to the tiny tutorial for the handles and the tutorial bundle for the hand stitching of the yo-yos, all down in the description bar in case you want to go back and see any of the previously taped segments. And then next time we'll be meeting, I'll be going over some zippered construction and also other tips for using your scraps. So take care, guys, and have a great week.